You are a burden, and you can no longer live with us. That's what my father said, right there, during Christmas dinner. The table was still warm with the scent of baked ham and cinnamon candles when those words fell like glass shattering on the floor. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My mother gave a nervous laugh, the kind people give when they're not sure if it's a joke. But it wasn't. He just stared at me, unblinking, waiting. My sister Lily sat across from me, 16, still holding her fork, her eyes wide in disbelief. The lights twinkled above us, the Christmas tree glowing in the corner, and yet everything felt cold. I swallowed the piece of ham I was chewing and set my fork down. What did you just say? You overstayed your welcome, my father said calmly. It's time you leave. I just sat there, processing. I was 23, with a stable job. Sure, I could have moved out before, but I stayed because they needed me. I paid the bills, electricity, internet, groceries, even Netflix, everything. Because my father hadn't worked in years, and my mom only had a part-time job. I wasn't a burden. I was the reason that house still had lights. And now, I was being thrown out. Mom tried to speak. Maybe we should talk about this later. But Dad interrupted her. No, Ed, this is my house. My rules. And I said he's done here. Lily put her fork down. She looked terrified. Maybe she realized what I was realizing too. If they could throw me out this easily, what would they do to her one day? I took a breath. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. If they wanted me gone, fine. But they weren't ready for what that really meant. I leaned back in my chair. All right, I said quietly. My father straightened, smug, like he'd just won some invisible battle. Mom looked away, maybe in shock. Maybe because she didn't care as much as I thought she did. I stood up, took my plate to the sink, and looked at Lily. She was still frozen, confused. I gave her a small nod. She was the only one at that table who still mattered to me. If you've ever been betrayed by your own family, you know this pain. It's not anger first. It's silence. A silence that burns. If this story already hit something inside you, subscribe. Not for me, but for you. Because if this resonates, it's because you've lived it too. That night, I didn't say another word. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the half-packed gifts I bought for everyone. The irony stung. I had spent the last of my paycheck, making sure they had a perfect Christmas. And this was my reward. Downstairs, I could hear them talking. My mother's voice was low, shaky. My father's tone sharp, absolute. Every few sentences, I caught fragments. He's old enough. He can figure it out. He should have left years ago. The same words parents use when they want to wash their hands of you. An hour later, there was a soft knock on my door. It was Lily. Her eyes were red. What the hell was that? She whispered. I shrugged, stuffing my laptop into my backpack. Guess I'm moving out. You pay for everything, she said, her voice breaking. They can't even buy groceries without you. Not my problem anymore, I said quietly. Her jaw trembled. Where will you go? I'll figure out. Truth was, I had some savings, not much, but enough to get by for a while. I'd have to crash at a friend's place, maybe Jake's couch. Not ideal, but it didn't matter. I wasn't afraid. I was done being the one who carried everyone else. She hesitated, then said what I knew she was thinking. Can I come with you? I froze. God, how I wanted to say yes. But she was 16, still in school. I couldn't just take her away, not legally. You know they'd never allow that, I said. Her eyes fell to the floor. Yeah, I know. She stood there for a moment silent, tears threatening to fall. Then she whispered, You're going to regret this. I smiled faintly. I already don't. The next morning, before anyone woke up, I carried my bags to the car. The air outside was icy, the sun barely rising over frosted windows. I looked at the house one last time, not with sadness, but with relief. For years, I had been paying for their comfort, their warmth, their peace. Now it was time for them to feel what I felt all along, alone. Before leaving, I opened my banking app and removed my name from every single bill: electricity, internet, water, everything. Even Netflix. Without me, all of it would shut down in a month. I started the car, exhaled, and drove away. No tears, no hesitation, just freedom. I spent the next few days at Jake's apartment. His couch was old. His dog wouldn't stop staring at me while I tried to sleep, and his roommate kept joking about me being homeless. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt light. No more paying for a house that wasn't mine. No more pretending to respect a man who threw me out like trash. No more guilt. Then, 3 days later, my phone started ringing. At first, I ignored it. 7 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, and a few texts from Lily. I scrolled lazily until one message from Lily made me stop. They're freaking out. The power's out. I couldn't help but smile. So the lights finally went off. A few minutes later, another text arrived. Dad's furious. Says you did something to the house. Oh, this was about to get interesting. Over the next few days, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls, voice messages, desperate texts. Mom was panicking. Dad was furious. Lily, she was caught in the middle. I ignored them all. I wasn't being cruel. I was finally protecting my peace. For years, I had been their lifeline, the one who fixed, paid, and solved everything. And they never noticed. They only saw me when they needed something. Now they were learning what life without me really looked like. Lily kept sending me updates. Internet's gone. Mom's freaking out. Water still works, but for how long? Every message felt like poetic justice. The house that once drained me was finally crumbling under its own weight. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. A week later, another message from Lily arrived. Dad's losing it. He's breaking stuff in the living room. I could almost picture it. Him pacing, shouting, blaming everyone but himself. The man who called me a burden now couldn't even keep the lights on without me. I didn't reply. I just smiled and went back to scrolling through apartment listings. Jake noticed me grinning at my phone. "What's up?" he asked. I shrugged, just watching karma work. He laughed. "You're really not going back, huh?" "Not in this lifetime." That night, as I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not happiness exactly, but the calm that comes after you finally stop bleeding for people who never cared if you lived or died. 2 weeks later, I found a place. A small one-bedroom apartment. Furnished. Quiet. Cheap. It wasn't much, but it was mine. When I moved in, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes in silence. No yelling. No tension. Just me and peace. I could finally breathe. That same night, my phone lit up again. "Lily, please answer," she texted. I hesitated. Something about her tone felt different. I answered. "Mom's been crying for days," she said. "Dad keeps yelling at her. He says it's your fault. They don't know what to do." I sighed. "That's not my problem anymore, Lily." "I know," she whispered, "but it's bad, like really bad." Before I could respond, I heard Mom's voice yelling in the background, "Tell him to come home." I hung up. I wasn't going back. That house wasn't a home anymore. It was a graveyard of all the things I'd sacrificed: my money, my patience, my dignity. Let them live in the darkness they built. That night, I slept better than I had in years. A few nights later, it happened. It was late. I'd just taken a shower. The city outside silent except for distant cars. My phone started ringing again. It was Mom. I rolled my eyes and ignored it. But then, a text from Lily popped up. "Please, just answer. It's serious." Something in her words made me pause. I picked up. The moment I said hello, I heard Mom's voice trembling on the other end. "Please come home." Her tone wasn't angry this time. It was broken, desperate. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "You don't need me, remember? Your father didn't mean what he said," she cried. "It was Christmas. He was upset." "No," I said coldly. "He meant every word." There was a pause, the kind that hurts to hear. Then her voice cracked again. "The house is falling apart. The bills we can't keep up. I stared at the ceiling. That sounds like a you problem. Please, she sobbed. We made a mistake. I should have felt sorry for her, but I didn't, because every single time I tried to speak, to be seen, to be appreciated, they ignored me. And now that the lights were off and the water was gone, they suddenly remembered my name. No, I said, my voice steady. You wanted me gone. You got what you wanted. Before she could respond, I hung up. For a few seconds, I just sat there, phone in hand, heart pounding. Not from anger, from freedom. That call was the final proof I needed. I didn't owe them anything. They had thrown me out not because I was a burden, but because I was a reminder of everything my father wasn't. Responsible, consistent, useful. He called me a load, but the truth was, I carried them all. I turned off my phone, crawled into bed, and slept like a child. No guilt, no nightmares, no noise. The next morning, my notifications exploded again. Dozens of missed calls, unread messages, even a few social media requests from Mom. She was trying everything to get through to me, but I ignored them all. A few days later, Lily messaged again. They're talking about selling the house. I frowned. Selling the house? Are you serious? I texted back. Yes. She replied instantly. Dad says he can't handle it anymore. Mom's crying. He wants to sell everything. I laughed out loud. Not out of joy, but disbelief. He was really doing it. After all those years pretending to be in control, pretending that throwing me out was about pride and authority. He was giving up. I shook my head. He's really that pathetic. Lily's next message came fast. He's selling your stuff too. My heart stopped. What do you mean my stuff? Your computer, your TV, even your bed. He says since you left, you don't need them. I felt heat rise through my chest, boiling up into my throat. The man who kicked me out at Christmas was now selling everything I owned, the things I bought with my money. I clenched my fists. My voice trembled as I texted back. Send me the address of the buyer. Lily hesitated for a few minutes, then finally sent it. I grabbed my keys and stormed out. The drive back to that house felt like crawling through a memory I'd buried alive. Every street, every turn, every light post looked exactly the same, but I wasn't the same person anymore. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw him, my father, standing by the porch, talking to a man in a gray coat. The buyer, probably. They were shaking hands, laughing like old friends. My blood boiled. I didn't even park properly. I slammed the door and walked straight toward them. What the hell do you think you're doing? I snapped. Both men turned. My father's smug face twisted into that familiar look of disdain. Oh, look who decided to show up, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. There's nothing left for you here. The buyer looked uncomfortable. Is there a problem? I ignored him. My eyes stayed locked on my father. You can't sell my things. He actually laughed. I can do whatever I want. You left, remember? You don't need any of it now. I paid for every single thing in that house. I shouted. He smirked, then by them back. For a moment, I felt something inside me snap. All the years of swallowing my pride, of paying bills while he sat doing nothing, of listening to his excuses, it all boiled over. I took a step closer, my voice calm but sharp. You know what? Go ahead. Sell the house. Sell it all. He frowned, confused. What are you talking about? I smiled coldly. Sell it. But when you do, you'll have nowhere to live. He chuckled. With the money, I'll buy a new place. Maybe a nice apartment. I leaned in. With what money? His smirk faltered. I watched it sink in, that creeping realization that he had no idea what was coming. I stepped back, looked him in the eye, and said quietly, You really think selling the house will fix everything? You don't even know what you owe. Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, the buyer staring awkwardly beside him. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up, my laptop open, planning every move. If he wanted to play games, I'd show him what it felt like to lose. I called every company, electricity, water, gas, even the property tax office. I told them the property was about to be sold and that all outstanding debts needed to be settled before the transfer. And there were many. Bills my father had ignored for years. Fees I'd been covering quietly. Fines he never paid. All of it came flooding back to him. But I wasn't done yet. I remembered something important. The house wasn't just in his name. My mother had legal rights to it too, and she had no idea he was trying to sell it. So I called her. She sounded surprised, almost suspicious. "You never call." "I know," I said, "but I thought you should know what your husband is doing." Silence. Then I told her everything. The sale, the lies, the buyer, every detail. She went completely quiet. I could hear her breathing, sharp, trembling, furious. "He can't do that," she whispered. "He can if you let him," I said. And I hung up. The next day, Lily texted me early in the morning. "They're fighting. It's bad." I could almost picture it. The shouting, the accusations, the walls echoing with the chaos I'd left behind. "Dad tried to defend himself," she wrote, "but Mom's furious. She found out about the sale and said she'll call a lawyer." I smiled. Good. He'd finally met his match, not in me, but in the woman he thought he could manipulate forever. Later that evening, Lily called. I could hear the storm in her voice. "You won't believe this," she said. "He's leaving. Mom told him if he wants to sell everything, he can go do it alone." I leaned back in my chair, a slow grin spreading across my face. "Incredible," I whispered. For years, my mother had been quiet, submissive, afraid to stand up to him. But now, she'd had enough. "He's packing right now," Lily continued. "He's calling friends, asking for a place to stay." I laughed softly. Poetic justice. Because this was exactly what he had done to me. He'd looked me in the eye and told me to get out. Now, life was making him taste his own words. That night, Lily sent one more message. "You won." I stared at those two words for a long time. Did I really win? Or did I just stop losing? Either way, it felt like peace. I wrote back, "No, Lily. I just did what I had to do." Days passed. The silence from that house was almost unsettling. No calls, no texts, nothing. Then one afternoon, Lily called again, her voice lighter than I'd heard in months. "He's gone," she said. "Mom kicked him out. She's been working more hours, trying to get everything back on track." "Is she okay?" I asked. "Yeah, tired, but better." She said she's sorry, for everything. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive, but another part, the part that remembered that Christmas night, couldn't. I just said, "Tell her I'm glad she's doing better." When I hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the glow of my small apartment. No shouting, no tension, no guilt. For the first time, I realized I didn't miss them, not even a little. Weeks went by. I focused on work, saved money. For the first time, every paycheck was mine. I bought decent food, new clothes, even joined a gym. My father used to mock me for my job, calling it a kid's paycheck. But that same paycheck had kept him alive for years. Now it was building my future. One evening, Lily called again, laughter in her voice this time. "You're not going to believe this," she said between giggles. "Dad's sleeping on a friend's couch. None of his old buddies want to deal with him. He's miserable." I couldn't help but laugh too. It was poetic. The man who thought I was a burden had become one himself. He always called me a load, but the truth was, he was the real weight dragging everyone down. And now, the world was finally showing him that. Months passed, and little by little, I started rebuilding myself. I invested the money I used to waste keeping the house alive. I learned how to manage my finances, started taking online courses, focused on growing in my career. The same job my father once mocked, the one he said would never get me anywhere, was now giving me everything I needed. A promotion came, and with it, a raise. I bought a better car, traveled for the first time, ate in restaurants where the lights didn't flicker, where laughter didn't sting. Every step forward felt like reclaiming another piece of myself they'd tried to break. But even in peace, memories have a way of finding you. Sometimes when I'd come home late, the quiet would remind me of that Christmas night, the sound of the fork dropping, the silence, the sting of being unwanted. I didn't hate them anymore. Hate is heavy. I just didn't care. Lily and I kept in touch. She was studying hard, trying to finish school and get out of that house for good. I helped her when I could, money for books, advice, encouragement. But I made one thing clear. I'll help you stand. But I won't carry anyone ever again. She understood. Meanwhile, Dad's life kept falling apart. Lily told me he'd tried moving back in after a few months, begging Mom to give him another chance. But this time, she didn't flinch. She closed the door in his face. He yelled, begged, said she couldn't survive without him, but she already had. The man who once called me a failure was now sleeping on couches, out of work, relying on the same pity he never gave. And Mom, the woman who stayed silent that night, was finally finding her strength. She'd learned to manage her bills, to work full-time, to live without anyone controlling her. Ironically, the house he tried to sell now belonged entirely to her. As for me, I never went back. Not once. Because some doors, once closed, should never open again. I wasn't that boy at the dinner table anymore. I wasn't the burden, the helper, or the savior. I was just me. And that was enough. If the story touched something inside you, if you've ever felt like you were the only one holding everything together, subscribe. Not for me, but for you, because this story isn't just about pain. It's about freedom. And maybe it's your time to find yours too. Time moved on, and so did I. My life became quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty but peaceful. I'd wake up early, make coffee, play music while getting ready for work. I started going on morning runs, feeling the cold air bite at my lungs, reminding me I was alive. Freedom wasn't loud. It was stillness. Sometimes, though, that stillness brought reflection. I'd think about how strange it was. That pain can be the thing that saves you. That being thrown out of your own home can be the beginning of a better one. I didn't hate my father anymore. He was just small, a man trapped in his own bitterness. Someone who confused control with strength. Lily told me once that he'd been trying to find work again, but no one would hire him. His debts, his reputation, his pride, all of it had finally caught up to him. And Mom? She'd become someone else entirely. Stronger, smarter, independent. It turned out she didn't need him. She never did. She just needed to believe she could stand without him. When I visited Lily one weekend, I noticed something different in the house. It wasn't the walls or furniture. It was the energy. There was peace. There was laughter. There was life. For years, that house had felt like a prison. Now it felt like a home again. Mom smiled when she saw me, shyly at first, like she wasn't sure I'd still talk to her. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "You did what I never had the courage to do." Her words caught me off guard. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and said, "We all have to grow up sometime." That night, Lily and I sat on the porch, drinking hot chocolate, watching the stars. "You ever think you'll forgive him?" she asked. I thought about it for a long time before answering. "Forgiveness isn't for him," I said. "It's for me, and I'm not there yet." She smiled softly. "You will be." Maybe she was right. But forgiveness wasn't something I was rushing toward. I had spent years forgiving people who never apologized. This time, I was taking my time, healing on my terms. As we sat there in the quiet, I realized something powerful. I wasn't defined by what they did to me. I was defined by how I rebuilt myself after they broke me. And that was my real victory. The weeks that followed felt like the first real chapter of my life. No shadows, no guilt, no weight that wasn't mine to carry. Every time I looked back on that Christmas night, I no longer saw a tragedy. I saw a beginning. The night my life finally started, I began seeing things differently. The things I once thought were losses were really lessons. That house didn't fall apart because I left. It fell apart because I was the only thing holding it together. And once I let go, the truth showed itself. My father's strength had always been an illusion. His authority, his pride, his control, all of it built on the foundation of my silence. The moment I stopped playing my role, the entire system collapsed. That realization became my peace. I started to understand something about family. That blood isn't enough. It's not about who shares your last name. It's about who stands with you when everything falls apart. Lily was family. Mom, maybe one day could be again. But my father? He was just a lesson. A lesson about love that conditions itself, about power that hides behind fear. One day, Lily sent me a message out of nowhere. He called again, she wrote. He wants to come back. I didn't even respond. There was nothing to say. You can't rebuild bridges with people who keep setting them on fire. I knew his type, the kind who only reaches out when the world stops revolving around them. And even then, it's never out of love, it's out of need. I wasn't going to be needed anymore. That night, I lit a candle on my windowsill and just sat there, watching the city lights blink in the distance. It hit me how far I'd come, from that small, powerless kid at the dinner table to a man who could finally stand on his own. I didn't have everything figured out. I still had doubts, fears, moments of loneliness. But I was finally living a life that belonged to me. For years, I believed that peace was something other people found. People who had better families, better luck, better lives. But I was wrong. Peace doesn't come from what you have. It comes from what you stop allowing. That was a lesson hidden beneath all the pain. And if you've ever been told you're a burden, if someone you love made you feel like you don't belong, remember this. Sometimes being pushed away is the universe's way of setting you free. Because maybe, just maybe, they didn't throw you out. Maybe life threw them out of your story. Sometimes, I wonder what my father sees when he looks in the mirror now. Does he see the man who once sat at the head of the table, believing he ruled a kingdom? Or does he finally see what the rest of us always knew? That his throne was built on nothing but pride and fear? I heard from Lily that he tried to rebuild his life, moving from couch to couch, calling old friends who slowly stopped answering. People can only carry a man like that for so long before realizing he'll never carry himself. He blamed everyone, of course. Me, Mom, the economy, fate, everything but the man in the mirror. And I think that's the worst kind of prison. Not the one made of walls, but the one made of denial. Meanwhile, my life kept moving forward. I was promoted again. The company I worked for started trusting me with bigger projects. I wasn't rich, but I was stable, something I never thought I'd feel. I used to think success meant proving everyone wrong. But now I know true success is when you no longer need to prove anything at all. One evening, I was leaving work when my phone buzzed with another message from Lily. Mom's doing great. She fixed the roof, paid off all the old debts. She even got a new car. I smiled. She deserves it. She does, Lily replied. And so do you. Her words hit me harder than I expected. For years, I had carried guilt like a scar. Guilt for leaving, guilt for being happy, guilt for choosing myself. But now, hearing those words from her, it felt like a release. Maybe I did deserve it. I walked home that night under the city lights, the cool air filling my lungs. I passed by shop windows glowing with Christmas decorations. The season was back again, a full year since that night. It was strange how quickly life can change in 12 months. Last Christmas, I lost everything. This one, I had peace. As I walked into my apartment, I lit a small candle by the window, the same way Mom used to. The flame flickered softly, painting the room with gold. And for the first time since that night, I didn't think about what I'd lost. I thought about what I'd gained. Silence, freedom, myself, the kind of gifts no one can wrap. That Christmas night, the one that began with rejection and ended with silence, now lived in my mind like an old movie I'd already seen too many times. But each time I thought of it, the pain faded a little more, because now I understood something I didn't back then. Sometimes life doesn't break you to destroy you. It breaks you to wake you up. And that night woke me up. I stopped confusing sacrifice with love. I stopped mistaking loyalty for obligation. And most importantly, I stopped trying to save people who didn't want to be saved. I learned that being the strong one isn't about carrying everyone else. It's about learning when to finally put the weight down. Lily would call me often now, not crying or venting like before, but laughing. She'd talk about her plans after graduation, the university she wanted to apply to, the places she wanted to see. "I want to be like you," she said one evening. "Independent. Free." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Be better than me," I told her. "Be free without having to go through what I did." It made me proud, seeing her grow, seeing her believe in something beyond the chaos we were born into. Mom had changed too. When we talked, her voice carried something it never had before: strength. She told me she'd learned to budget, to handle the bills, even to fix things around the house herself. "You know," she said once, "I thought losing your father would destroy me, but maybe it's what saved me." I didn't say anything. I just let her speak, because for once, she wasn't crying, she was living. Meanwhile, my father had vanished into the background of our lives. No calls, no updates, no presents. And for the first time, that silence didn't hurt. It healed. There's something strangely powerful about realizing that the people who once controlled your emotions no longer have access to them. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was simply done. And in that done, I found peace. Because peace isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering it without letting it control you. That's the real freedom. A full year had passed since that night. 1 year since the fork hit the plate. Since my father's words shattered the air. "You're a burden and you can't live with us anymore." And yet, I'd never felt lighter. It's strange, isn't it? The same words that once broke, you can later become the reason you rise. I didn't realize it then, but my father did me a favor. He forced me to face myself, to build something of my own. And sometimes, the people who push you away are really just pushing you toward your destiny. Now, I had a life that was mine in every sense. My apartment, my income, my freedom, my peace. I didn't owe anyone an explanation or an apology. I'd learned to enjoy solitude, to understand that quiet isn't emptiness. It's space to grow. Every now and then, I'd think of that boy sitting at the Christmas table, holding back tears, trying to understand why love could hurt that much. If I could talk to him now, I'd tell him this: "You're not hard to love. They just didn't know how to love someone who didn't need saving." Because the truth is, not everyone deserves your help. Not everyone deserves your loyalty. And family, real family, doesn't make you beg for love. That lesson came wrapped in pain, but it was the greatest gift life could have given me. I know many people watching this have been through something similar. Maybe not on Christmas night, but in their own way. Maybe you were told you're not enough. Maybe someone made you feel like your worth depended on how much you gave. But listen carefully. You're allowed to stop carrying everyone else. You're allowed to choose you. Because choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And if this story spoke to something deep inside you, it echoed a truth you've been afraid to face, then this message is for you. Subscribe, not for me, but for yourself. Because if this story resonated with you, it's because you're ready. Ready to stop bleeding for people who call it love. Ready to rebuild. Ready to be free. As months turned into another year, my life began to settle into a rhythm that felt almost unfamiliar because it was peaceful. No shouting behind walls, no cold silence at dinner tables, just the hum of the city outside, the soft rhythm of a life that finally belonged to me. I found new friends, people who didn't need saving, who laughed without mockery, who saw me without judgment. For the first time, connection didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt like warmth. Lily graduated. I was there that day, standing in the crowd, clapping until my hands hurt when she crossed the stage. She saw me wave and smiled, a real smile, the kind that said, "We made it." After the ceremony, she ran into my arms and whispered, "You were right. Leaving was the best thing you ever did." I laughed. "I think it was the hardest, too." "Hard things make us who we are," she said. She'd grown into someone strong, brave, and kind. And I realized then, maybe everything I went through wasn't just for me. Maybe it was to show her that there was another way to live. Later that night, as I drove home, the sunset spilled across the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The same kind of light that had once reflected off the Christmas ornaments in our living room the night my world broke. Only now, it didn't hurt to remember, because the boy who was told he was a burden was gone. In his place stood a man who carried no one's weight but his own and still stood tall. It's funny how life works. Sometimes, the moments that feel like the end are really just the opening credits to the life you were meant to live. As I parked outside my apartment, I looked up at the windows glowing softly in the fading light. My home, my peace. I thought about calling Mom to thank her for standing up for herself, for standing up to him, but I didn't. Some gratitude doesn't need words. Some love just lives quietly, in knowing someone finally chose themselves. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the city pulse with life below. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living. Life moved quietly after that. No more chaos, no more begging for peace inside places that only knew noise. I kept building, slowly, patiently. I invested part of my savings into a small business, something I'd always dreamed of but never dared to do when I lived under their roof. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could build something from nothing. The first few months were rough. Late nights, endless planning, constant self-doubt. But unlike before, when failure meant humiliation, now failure just meant learning. And with every challenge, I could almost hear that old voice in my head, my father's, saying you can't do it. Except now, that voice no longer scared me. It fueled me. Because every success, every little victory, was a quiet rebellion against everything he ever said I wasn't. By the end of that year, my business was growing. I had clients, stability, and something I never thought I'd have again, confidence. One night, I got a message from an unknown number. It was short, just 2 words. I'm sorry. For a moment, my heart stopped. I knew who it was. My father. I stared at the screen, the words glowing softly in the dark. My first instinct was to delete it, to pretend it never came. But something inside me wouldn't let me. Not because I wanted to respond, but because that message wasn't for me. It was for him. It was the apology he should have made years ago. Not when I needed it, but when he did. I didn't reply. Not out of anger. Not out of pride. But because forgiveness doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes silence is your closure. I turned off my phone and stepped out onto my balcony. The night air was cold, crisp, endless. The city below shimmered like 1,000 possibilities. I realized then that life had finally come full circle. The house I once called home was no longer mine, but the peace I built. That was something no one could take away. And maybe that's what healing really is. Not getting back what was lost, but learning you never needed it in the first place. I didn't think much about that message after that night. It sat there, unread but unforgettable, like a ghost that had finally stopped haunting me. Days turned into weeks. Life moved on, as it always does when you stop feeding the things that hurt you. My mornings became sacred. I'd wake up early, make my coffee, step onto the balcony, and watch the sunrise climb above the city. Each morning felt like a quiet victory, proof that peace could be simple if you stopped chasing chaos. I started writing again, not for anyone else, but for me. Thoughts, memories, fragments of lessons I'd learned through the pain. It helped me make sense of everything. One night, while I was journaling, Lily called. Her voice was soft, but I could hear something behind it, a tremor of sadness. "He's sick," she said quietly. I froze. "Dad?" "Yeah, nothing serious, but he's been alone for weeks. Nobody checks on him." He called me crying. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "And what did you do?" "I told him to call you," she said. I sighed, shaking my head. "Lily, I know," she whispered. "I just thought maybe." "No," I said gently. He made his choices, and so did I. There was silence between us, heavy but not cruel. "I just don't want you to hate him forever," she said. "I don't," I replied. "I don't hate him. I just don't owe him anything." It wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. There's a difference between healing and pretending. Healing means you remember, but it doesn't control you. Pretending means you act like it never happened, and that's not freedom. After the call, I sat in the quiet for a long time. My thoughts wandered to that Christmas table, to the cold look in his eyes, to the boy I used to be. I wondered if maybe, deep down, he always feared me. not because I was weak, but because I was everything he wasn't: responsible, determined, unbreakable. And maybe that's why he tried to make me feel small, because my existence reminded him of his own failures. I looked out at the city again, lights blinking like a heartbeat, and whispered, "I forgive you," not because he deserved it, but because I did. And in that moment, something inside me loosened, like a knot finally untied. The next morning felt different, lighter, as if saying those words, "I forgive you," had quietly rearranged something in the universe. I went about my day like usual: coffee, work, gym, home. But everything felt softer, quieter. Peace wasn't just around me anymore. It was in me. That night, I got another message from Lily. Mom invited me to spend Christmas at her place this year. She asked if he'd come too. I stared at the message for a long time. Christmas. The word itself still carried weight. I could still hear his voice echoing in my mind. Still see the way the lights flickered that night. The way the world stopped. Part of me wanted to say no, to protect my peace. But another part, the one that had healed enough to face the past, wanted to go. Not to relive it, but to reclaim it. I typed back, "I'll think about it." A week later, I found myself standing at the doorway of the old house. The same bricks, the same porch, the same scent of pine in winter. But everything else was different. Mom opened the door and smiled. It wasn't forced this time. It wasn't a nervous smile she used to wear like armor. It was genuine. "Come in," she said softly. Inside, the house felt warm. The lights glowed, the table was set, and there was laughter. Not the kind that had discomfort, but real laughter. Lily ran up to hug me, and for a moment, it felt like we were kids again. Except this time, there was no tension in the air. Mom handed me a cup of hot cider. "I'm glad you came," she said. I looked around the room, the same room where everything once fell apart, and I realized something profound. Sometimes you have to let something die for it to be reborn. This house, this family, this love, it had all been broken. But now it was rebuilding itself, piece by piece, into something real. We talked, we ate, we laughed. There were no apologies, no explanations, just presence. When I looked at Mom and Lily that night, I didn't see ghosts anymore. I saw survivors. People who'd made it through the storm and still found the courage to love again. And in that moment, I knew I was finally home. Not in a house, not in walls or memories, but in peace. Later that night, after dinner, I stepped outside onto the porch. The cold air bit my cheeks, but I didn't mind. The sky was clear, full of stars that shimmered like tiny reminders that even in darkness, light still exists. Inside, I could hear laughter, Lily and Mom washing dishes, music playing faintly from a small speaker. There was warmth, life, healing, things that had been missing from this place for so long. I took a slow breath and looked out toward the quiet street. Everything around me was still, peaceful, and for the first time in years, so was I. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message. Unknown number. "I heard you're home." I didn't have to guess who it was. I stared at the screen, my heart strangely calm. For a long time, I didn't type anything. Then I wrote 3 simple words. "Take care, Dad." I hit send and locked the phone. No anger, no bitterness, just closure. Because some stories don't need to end with reconciliation. They just need to end. And in that moment, I realized forgiveness doesn't always mean rebuilding bridges. Sometimes, it means letting them stay broken and learning to walk your own path anyway. I stood there, looking at the stars, and whispered a quiet thank you to the universe. Not for the pain I went through, but for the strength it gave me, for the lessons hidden beneath every heartbreak, for the peace that came after the storm. When I went back inside, Mom and Lily were sitting by the fire, laughing about something trivial, their faces glowing in the flickering light. I sat down beside them, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I was part of it again, not because they needed me, but because I had finally chosen to be there. The clock struck midnight, and Lily handed me a small gift box. Inside was a photo, the 3 of us, smiling, taken just minutes earlier. On the back, she'd written, "Not the family we were, but the family we became." I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. because she was right. We weren't the same people anymore. We were better. And maybe that's what healing really looks like. Not erasing the past, but growing beyond it. That night, after everyone went to sleep, I stayed by the fireplace for a while, staring at the flickering light as it danced across the walls. The house was silent again, but this time, it wasn't an empty silence. It was peace. It's strange how life works. The same room where everything once ended was now where everything began again. Not as it was, but as it should have been all along. The warmth of the fire reminded me of something I had nearly forgotten. That love, real love, doesn't hurt. It doesn't demand you shrink or sacrifice who you are. It doesn't call you a burden. Real love is quiet, steady, patient. It doesn't take from you. It builds with you. I sat there thinking about how long it took to learn that. How many nights I'd spent wondering what I did wrong, when the truth was, I'd been right all along. Leaving wasn't an act of rebellion. It was an act of survival. I had to walk away to understand that family isn't about blood. It's about connection, about who stands beside you when the lights go out. And sometimes, it's about walking alone until you find that light again within yourself. I looked at the photo Lily had given me, the three of us smiling. For a long time, I thought I'd never smile like that again. Not after everything that was said, not after everything that was lost. But I was wrong, because happiness isn't something you find after pain. It's something you build through it. The wind outside howled softly, carrying with it the scent of winter pine. I stood, took one last look at the fire, and whispered to the empty room, I'm not angry anymore. And I meant it, because healing doesn't happen when you forget what broke you. It happens when it no longer has the power to break you again. I turned off the lights, feeling lighter than I ever had. For years, I'd been chasing love that looked like acceptance, not realizing that the only acceptance I ever needed was my own. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, sharp but refreshing. The stars shimmered above, infinite, untouchable, free. And for the first time in my life, so was I. A year later, on another cold December night, I sat once more by my own window, watching the snow drift lazily under the city lights. The glow of the streets below painted everything in silver and gold, and for a moment, it almost felt like time had looped, as if Christmas had come full circle. But this time, I wasn't waiting for anyone's approval. I wasn't hoping for apologies or explanations. I was simply grateful. Grateful for the pain that pushed me to grow. Grateful for the silence that taught me peace. Grateful for the ending that gave birth to a beginning. Because that's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes, being called a burden is what forces you to build your wings. If that night hadn't happened, if those words hadn't been said, I might still be there, trapped in a house that never felt like home, mistaking duty for love and survival for living. But pain has a strange way of showing us who we are. It strips away illusions until all that's left is truth. And the truth is, freedom always costs something, but it's always worth the price. I stood and looked at my reflection in the glass. I didn't see the broken kid who left that night. I saw a man who had finally learned to love himself the way no one else ever did. Behind me, the faint light of my Christmas tree flickered softly, not as a reminder of what was lost, but of what was found. Peace, strength, self-respect. And when I thought about my father, wherever he was, I didn't feel anger anymore. I just hoped that, somewhere along the way, he'd learn too, because hate keeps you chained to the past. But forgiveness sets you free. I took a deep breath, feeling that quiet calm in my chest, the kind that comes only after every storm. So if you're listening to this, and someone once made you feel small, if they told you that you were too much, too loud, too dependent, too broken, remember this. You are not too much for the wrong people. You are exactly enough for the right life. And maybe, like me, you just needed to be pushed out of the wrong place to finally find it. So let this be your sign. Stop waiting for permission to be free. Stop apologizing for outgrowing the people who kept you small. Walk away, rebuild, and never look back. Because sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to begin again. If this story touched you, if it made you feel seen, understood, or a little less alone, subscribe. Not because of me, but because you deserve stories that remind you healing is real, freedom is possible, and you are not the burden. You are the light.